episode number 142 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Candace Burch. Candace is the founder of Your Hormone Balance and a founding member of Women Inbalance, one of the first nonprofits in the country to advocate for women's hormonal health. Her goal is to help people naturally rebalance their hormones to relieve symptoms and restore balance in their lives. Candace has spent the last 30 years as a health educator, journalist, and women's health advocate, raising public awareness about natural hormone health, including lobbying senators on Capitol Hill for safe access to bioidentical alternatives to hormone replacement therapy. So welcome to the podcast, Candace.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So you have a lot of background in hormonal balance, and I'd love to have the listeners hear it.
Okay. Well, I will share what I know in context with what you're interested in, and I'll do my best here. So we're talking about wholesome fertility.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, which really depends a lot on hormones.
Yes, quite a bit. They sort of do rule the process.
For sure.
Not sort of. They do. They do rule. And as you know, just before we were recording, I'm sneezing a bit. I have some allergies. So if I sound like I'm not crying, listeners, I'm just sort of sneezing. Anyway, carry on.
So can you share your background?
Yeah. So my story is I have a master's degree in health education, and I've been doing health education in the form of journalism for the last 25 years or so. But when I went into perimenopause, that in-between period of before your periods stop completely, usually in the mid-40s, I had two little kids because I started late in life with children. And I was going through mood swings and hot flashes and all kinds of changes in my period and my moods and my memory. And my kids were getting really the brunt of it because I was just always having, I had a really short fuse. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this. And so I decided it was obviously hormonal time to get into learning more about my hormones and what was happening to me. And I find that a lot of women don't really know what is happening during perimenopause when hormones start to shift and fluctuate. So I got really interested in applying my health education background to hormonal health, and contacted one of the gurus in the field at the time. He still is a guru, has passed, but Dr. John Lee, who wrote the first book about what your doctor may not tell you about menopause. He also wrote one about premenopause. But he advised, I sent him an email and said, I really want to learn more about these hormones and what's happening. I'm a health educator. Can I sit at your knee? Can I study? Can I learn? And he said, check out ZRT Lab, which is a big saliva testing lab in your area, Portland, Oregon, and see if you can work with them. And long story short, I ended up being the director of education for one of the largest saliva testing labs in the country. So I have a sort of unique background because I was mentored and I learned on the job about hormones, that there is such a thing as a hormonal imbalance, that you can test for it and that you can find out what your levels are. And in relation to fertility, that's crucial, of course. So anyway, over the years, I have been continuing to, I've kind of morphed into a hormone health consultant. I have a little consulting business online called Your Hormone Balance. That's yourhormonebalance.com. People can find us. There's a symptom quiz there to determine if you think if some of your symptoms are representing a hormone imbalance, and we can help you determine imbalances and what to do about them. So as to, get into the place where you're relieving symptoms, or if you're trying to get pregnant, we can help you rebalance your hormones so that you can practice that conscious conception.
Right. Well, it's so important, and we're living at such a great time because we have these amazing tests, and they're really things that you can actually access without having to go to the doctor, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, remember when I first started at ZRT, and that was in 2000, so many of our clients at the time were not providers as much as they were patients or women who were feeling desperate, who knew that they had something going on. They were women who'd probably been, they'd often been given antidepressants for what they were going through,
right.
But they didn't really feel depressed. They felt like, I'm not really depressed. Or they'd been told to go back on birth control to regulate certain aspects of their periods, which were giving them horrible symptoms. But they suspected something was going on, something deeper than that, something more fundamental. So it was really, the charge towards hormonal health was really led by women who have a better sense of what's going on than anybody, really. And that was, and from there was a whole kind of explosion of knowledge around hormones, especially when the Women's Health Initiative came out and revealed that women on hormone replacement therapy were actually at greater risk for the different health problems that they'd been told HRT would protect them from, like heart health and blood clots and strokes and breast cancer. We had been told taking hormone replacement would help us, and in fact, it was creating a greater risk. So it was around that time, 2003, when that study came out, that the move towards more integrative, holistic, functional approaches towards balancing hormones became, a big movement in the industry.
Right. And just something that I also want to mention, even today, if you go to the doctor and you're feeling a little off, a lot of times they still won't check all the details that you can get from like saliva tests, and they'll say maybe you're depressed, maybe put you on hormonal contraceptive, and this happens now.
It does happen now, and I hear it. Shockingly, I still hear it, from women who will tell me that my doctor says it's pointless to test my hormones, that I'm just going through what, it's either, and some women even say that their doctors still tell them it's in your head, you're imagining this. And so many women will say, is this all in my head? No, it's not in your head. It's in your hormones, especially if you have identifiable symptoms that are such clues to the problem. And there are a lot more doctors out there, functional medicine doctors now. There's a whole world of them that do know a lot more about hormones, that do understand that testing is important, that do use various tests like saliva or urine or blood, which I'm not in the urine or blood camp. I'm definitely a promoter of not promoter, but believer in the simple, convenient, accurate look that you get from saliva testing of hormones. But the fact that women are still being told that there's no point in looking deeper, because this is just something you have to go.
So, no, it happens often, and a lot of doctors, unless they're trained in functional medicine, they don't really understand to look into the different types of testing. So, actually, in the topic of testing, what are the differences between blood, urine, and saliva?
Well, I don't like to disparage any other kinds of, like, blood testing and urine and saliva are all valid tests for hormones. It's just that they test different things. And so with blood testing, I guess I should explain, hormones travel in the bloodstream bound to a red blood cell by a binding protein. We call them globulins, protein globulins, sex hormone binding globulins. So these hormones are traveling in the bloodstream, and the bloodstream is like a reservoir of hormones. So when we test in blood, we get total levels of hormones unless we ask for a test for free levels, which would be unbound levels that have moved into the bloodstream. But that's not a standard blood draw. The standard blood draw will measure hormones that are inactive because they're bound. And also the standard blood test also usually measures FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which is that signal from the pituitary to the ovaries to make hormone. And if that level is high, generally that is an indication that the signal is falling on deaf ears. The ovaries aren't listening and they're not making hormone. If it's low, there can be a problem with the ability to ovulate and make enough hormone to do that, to make a healthy egg. You know this more than
Yes.
I. And also there's luteinizing hormone, which is that pituitary signal that to the ovaries to increase progesterone, the other hormone that is so crucial, produced upon ovulation, and is absolutely crucial to pregnancy. But those levels don't tell you, those FSH and LH aren't going to tell you how much progesterone or estrogen you actually have that is active at the cellular level. That's what you need to know if you're trying to get, you're hoping to get pregnant and have take a healthy pregnancy to term. So then there's Dutch testing or dried urine testing, which looks at the metabolites of hormone, and that's another approach to testing that gives you a lot more comprehensive information. That's looking at how pathways so that they don't accumulate and recirculate, and that's how very complicated situations can look into. But the simplest, most convenient, and accurate way to test hormones is through saliva. And obviously, I'm talking about what I know best, but I've come to believe, having talked to thousands of women about their hormone levels and what they mean, that there's so much information to impart that it's enough. We need to know in saliva is going to measure hormones that have become unbound from their red blood cell. There's only a tiny fraction, 2 to 4% of hormones that are actually signaled to go. That fraction that becomes the free fraction or the bioavailable fraction of hormone is what we can measure in saliva. We capture it as it leaves the bloodstream and moves into the target tissues where hormones do their work. They often talk about a hormone being like a key. It's a chemical messenger. So think of it as the key that opens the door. The door is the receptor site on a cell. So the key opens the door and gets in there, our mental, emotional, and physical lives. And we can measure that active level that's en route to the best way to measure uptake of hormones. If you're using topical hormones, women that are supplementing with progesterone or estrogen need to measure their hormones and monitor those levels to make sure that they're at they're at the right levels, especially in fertility. That's important. So we want to measure in saliva to be able to get those active levels. And the other thing is that saliva is the gold standard for measuring adrenal function, because if you really want to look at how well your adrenal glands are working, you need to kind of chart that diurnal curve from morning, noon, evening, bedtime. That means 4 collections at the appropriate time. The minute you wake up in the morning, at right before lunch, in the evening, and at bedtime. So that non-invasive salivary approach where you're just spitting into a tube at the right time of the day is the most accurate way to collect hormones to tell us how our adrenals are working. So 3 different ways. Women use all different, tests. That most doctors use the standard blood test, but the functional medicine docs, the naturopaths, the integrative therapists who've moved beyond the one size fits all. All 3 tests are
frequently used, I would say that people who operate in the world of functional medicine, trying to get to the root cause of things, are more prone to use saliva testing or urine testing. Saliva testing being the most simple, convenient method, and they all measure different things, so it depends on what you really want to look at. When we measure hormones in saliva, we look at estrogen and progesterone, those master female hormones that control our cycle. We look at the ratio between them, because that can tell us, even if these levels are in range, there can still be an imbalance between progesterone and estrogen, and that's particularly important for women who are concerned about conceiving. We need to know that there's a good balance there of those two female hormones. We also test testosterone, and the DHEA, the androgens, which, if elevated, can also run interference on women getting pregnant and disrupt ovulation, and also adrenal function can be crucial. So looking at those key hormone levels can tell us a lot about our potential for fertility. What shape are we in for conception? And if we're not in good shape, then we can start to take steps to bring about a place, get us into a place where we're ready and able to conceive and take a healthy pregnancy to term.
Yeah, and actually I do want to bring up a point, because a lot of times people who are having a hard time conceiving, they'll go on, message groups or online Facebook groups, and they see information about taking DHEA. They don't test for it, and then they'll buy the supplement, which I think is important to know what it's, to test for DHEA, because it is a hormone, and it's really important to know what's going on, because in certain circumstances you actually don't want to take it.
Because really, that is, DHEA is a precursor of estrogen, which may be why women think that they can take that to have more ample estrogen to grow that happy egg. But without testing, you're guessing.
Exactly.
I always say test, don't guess. You don't want to guess on that kind of a thing. Especially taking an androgen like a DHEA can tend to increase levels that then decrease the levels of the crucial estrogen and progesterone. These hormones are like, they always compare the hormonal milieu in a woman's body to a symphony. Mm-hmm. All these hormones work in synchrony with each other, like a symphonic melody. If one instrument is playing out of tune, the whole composition is off, right? Mm-hmm. So, or you can think of these hormones as a seesaw. If one is, when you were a kid and you were up at the other end, way up high, and then the mean kid on the other side slammed you to the ground, that's what can happen with hormones as well. If one is too high, if there's an excess of one hormone, you create a deficiency of another. Right. So supplementing without knowing what your levels actually are is actually probably not the wisest thing to do. I would absolutely agree with you. It's much more important to become aware of the symptoms of hormone imbalance so that you can take steps to rebalance them. Hormonal imbalances don't need to be permanent.
Right.
You don't need to fear not being able to get pregnant because you've maybe been on birth control for a long time. There's a whole process you have to go through to get your hormones back in action, your ovaries back in action, but
right.
It can be done. But it all starts with symptom awareness, mm-hmm. and then testing to confirm symptoms, and then taking the steps that really naturally duplicate your hormone behavior, supporting your hormones, feeding your fertility. And that's all really possible. But please don't guess and take things that may or may not damage your chances long term.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important, and especially now we have the access, so it's not hard to just test.
No, and I should say for your listeners, anyone listening that wants to test, just go to yourhormonebalance.com and use the code What code should we use? Michelle or Wholesome Fertility? We'll give you
we could say
$100.
Wholesome Fertility, and thank you so much for that. And I'll put that in the episode notes as well.
Yeah, we'd love to give you, we often do this, provide a $100 discount just to encourage people towards this avenue of, informing yourself, getting all the information you can get. And then, then you're on a good path to rebalancing. And there's so many things you can do naturally that are pretty exciting. So, yeah, Wholesome Fertility 100 will be a good code for you to use.
Awesome. I appreciate it. It's very generous of you. And I'm sure a lot of people will really benefit from it. And I think if money was an issue, now we have this amazing discount that Candace so generously just gave you guys. So thank you, Candace.
Sure, absolutely. But, the main thing you can know for free is your symptoms of hormonal imbalance. So a lot of women are used to just living with, these different things that drive us crazy during our cycle, thinking, oh, that's just being a woman. My mother had heavy, horrible periods. My aunt always had terrible PMS. I'm just a bitch on wheels. I have never, that's just me. I think people become their symptoms, not realizing that a lot of them are classic symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. So if you are a person that's always had heavy, painful periods, or irregular periods, or periods that go missing, if you're a person who has breast tenderness with every cycle, I call it fear of hugging. Some women are so tender in their breasts, it really hurts to put on their bra or to have anybody touch them in that area. If you have PMS, that's kind of pass me the shotgun type PMS, where you're ready to, so you're either yelling at the people you love in your life, or it's like all the people we love most in our lives have to take the brunt. I've talked to so many women that say, my husband knows when to clear out, when it's coming. And a lot of women that have rebalanced their hormones say that it's their husband or their partner that is the first person to notice that, hey, you're really easier to live with these days. And then people will say, oh, was it that bad? but so bad PMS, bloating, water retention, waking in the hip size bottom when you're thinking, my God, I work out, I eat well, I have clean eating. Why am I gaining this weight? Why can't I lose? And just feelings of, mood swings and depression. I talked about PMS, but PMS can include a whole syndrome of things like migraines and the water retention I was talking about, and the terrible moods. But it can be pretty bad where people are put on an antidepressant and they're saying to me, but I'm not depressed. My life is good. I love my children, my partner, my job, whatever it is. There must be something else going on. So pay attention to those symptoms of imbalance. They are classic hallmark symptoms of imbalance. That can be your first clue that you've got something going on that could come between you and your fertility.
Another thing is adrenal fatigue. Sometimes people will assume they're just tired because they work a lot and it's just part of life that they're so tired, and they don't realize that, no, this could be adrenal fatigue. So what's the difference between just circumstantial exhaustion and adrenal fatigue?
Well, adrenal fatigue is, it's a phrase that some people take issue with. Do the adrenals really get fatigued? There's a whole complex called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and these three work together to regulate our responses to stress. Stress being good or bad. You can have great career success and be in demand and making a ton of money and popular, and you can have children that childbearing or trying to get pregnant, or Christmas, birthdays, weddings. That's all good stress, but it's stress nevertheless. And then the obvious other stressors are things that go on, chronic, prolonged, heightened stress that goes on for too long. All of these things can, in excess, and when stress piles on, good or bad, and is unresolved, when we're just kind of going. I've talked to people who are just way overextended. And that's, the difference between being, as you described it, what's the difference between true adrenal issues and just being, burning the candle at both ends. There's not a whole lot of difference. When you're burning the candle at both ends and you're not sleeping well and you're overbooked and overcommitted and oversubscribed, and as women, we're pretty notorious for taking care of everybody but ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then you've got women who are in the thick of child rearing and their careers, and they're busy lawyers or doctors or just, working in the health realm, first line responders. Women who have incredible responsibilities can find it hard to get into the space where they can get pregnant because they're so overextended. And if the adrenals are overperforming for years at a time, I often ask people, what kind of stress have you had, good or bad? Stressors are just that biological, the body has to respond to them by creating more energy to cope, to take stress in stride. But if you're a kind of person who has a meltdown if somebody cuts you off in traffic, or if you're exhausted, if you're finding it really, you sleep 10 hours and you can't get out of bed, then we've got an adrenal issue probably from prolonged unresolved stressors that aren't, and unresolved, I say, because why? Because we're not taking time for ourselves. We're just thinking, I've heard people say, I'll sleep when I die. I'm in the shank of my career. I got to mojo it right now. I've got to be overextended on hyperdrive. And people are just, it gets into this place where now we can't even sleep. We're too tired and wired. And we can see that in a cortisol test. We can see, are your levels highest in the morning, which they should be. There's something called the cortisol awakening response. We're measuring cortisol to look at adrenal function. Cortisol is that hormone that the adrenals make to keep us in a state of energy, pulsing throughout the day. The adrenals also monitor our sleep-wake cycle. They regulate that, and they have a huge amount to do with our immune response. So it's, the adrenals also make adrenaline if we're running from a forest fire, but that's the acute phase of stress. We're talking about everyday stressors. How do we cope with them? Right. And how are we treating ourselves to be able to cope? And if we are in an overextended place, it's really hard. Not only, I talk to so many women who want to get pregnant, but they're not even in the mood to have sex. Their libido is so low that they're not even in a place where they can make time for that. Right. And, when you get to that, and that isn't just women in menopause. I'm talking younger women who are getting married, women who are engaged and who are worried about their libido, women who are wild about their husband, but not wild enough to want to, to have a night of lovemaking. So that makes it tough to get into the place for, conscious conception. And even trying to get pregnant can be stressful if the rest of your life is overcommitted. So adrenal fatigue I think it's a real thing. It's just that it involves more than just, it involves the adrenals and other organs and glands in the body. And it's important to understand that. But it's also important to understand that if we keep going without taking time for ourselves, without taking time to eat, how many people eat at their computer? How many people don't, they have coffee and numerous cups of coffee, which wreaks havoc on the adrenals. Extreme exercise, people who are doing high-intensity exercise all the time is a real sap to the adrenals. It's great to exercise, but we want to have a balance of, high intensity and low intensity, the kinds of exercise that release tension from the body. You don't want to be in a state of tension. And that's very hormonally disruptive and disruptive of ovulation. And that's one of the big things to understand. When you want to get pregnant, you don't want to be doing anything that's going to disrupt your ovulation. So that's where it gets into adrenal health and adrenal support. We want to have plenty of B vitamins in our dietary intake, plenty of good fats and lots of good things like turmeric and cinnamon and omega-3s. There have been studies in Denmark that show that women that eat avocados have have much higher rates of healthy pregnancies, women who, are doing IVF, and women who eat too much saturated fat have lower rates of successful pregnancy, and women who eat good monounsaturated fats have higher rates. There's all kinds of things that we can do, but I think it begins with having respect for our own, self-care. Yeah. And getting enough sleep, and also sleep can be a hormonal imbalance. Not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. That's another adrenal issue. So when I think what happens is that we know women know that we have these symptoms. They're probably an issue, but we, like I said, get convinced that that's just us. We get used to these symptoms. We just deal with them when they could be turned around. They don't need to be permanent. And, this isn't a permanent situation. You and I were talking about that a little earlier. You can turn these things around. And I think a lot of women don't even know how much better they could be feeling.
Oh, that's so true, because you can get used to feeling crappy. It becomes your new normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes over your whole life. And, a lot of times it is, I often say, blame it on your hormones. It's not just in your head. There are these imbalances. And yes, we need to make lifestyle changes. And yes, we need to, people who are vegan have to consider, are they getting enough good fats and protein into their diet if they're very strictly plant-based? There are many things. We know that the building blocks of hormones are good fats and protein. Cholesterol is the backbone of all hormones, so we need good fats and protein in our diet. We can't be scrimping on those things. We can't be, we're big on intermittent fasting, but for a lot of people, going too long without nutrition may be a risk. It's considered, that's a stressor, and the body will react by creating more stress hormones that will actually run interference on your fertility hormones. So we have to think about on all fronts, what is it that we do that we stress ourselves out and create adrenal imbalance, and what can we do to turn that around? So this is a great excuse. When you get a test result, it's really great to see things in black and white. I think that makes a difference. I started to say, women know they've got all this stuff going on, and they attribute it to just being a female or that it's all in their head. But then when you get the numbers on a test result and it shows you, hey, look, your estrogen is high, your progesterone is low, or maybe they're in range but the ratio is off, or maybe your testosterone is too high for your estrogen and progesterone to create a nice healthy egg and for you to ovulate. Maybe you've got PCOS. I can't diagnose PCOS, but we can look at the levels of hormones that are strongly associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which we know is a major hurdle for pregnancy and fertility. So having a test result in hand gives you, I think people actually feel relieved. It's like, oh my God, it's good to know, good to know that there's something going on here. There's a reason, not only why I feel this way, why I'm moody, why I can't lose weight, why I'm bloated, why, I'm never in the mood for sex. And then we can take steps to turn that around, which is, good news.
Oh, big time. It's empowering too. So it's interesting because there's always this debate, like, does stress really impact fertility? Well, you can see it from the hormonal level. You could literally see, just like you were saying, it's a symphony, and it totally disrupts the whole symphony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And it's probably one of the biggest disruptors, because I guess the way to put it is that if you're pounding the adrenals with, spotty nutrition or restricting your nutrition so that you're not getting the nutrients you need, extreme exercise, exposure to chemicals, that's another thing. Right. There's, endocrine disruptors, the chemicals in our environment that affect us most directly, or especially women, are many of the cosmetics we use are loaded with lead and heavy metals. There's lead in lipstick. There's carbon. There's carbon in eyeshadow. We're putting these things on our skin. The skin is a great absorptive organ. It absorbs everything. These chemicals actually they're often called estrogen mimickers. Mm-hmm. They can, and they're things not only in our cosmetics. I should mention the Cosmetic Safety Act has not been updated in this country in 80 years. So there are all these chemicals in our, that's why you want to go on, when we send you an action plan after you do your testing, we mention these things and resources to find non-toxic chemicals so that we can get these, rid our bodies of these accumulated chemicals that act like hormones but disrupt our normal hormone production. So that first place to start is to make sure that when you're eating any kind of protein that it is hormone free and GMO free. You want to check the label. It should say these animals have not been given artificial hormones. Right. Because, the factory farms shoot up their cattle with estrogens, RBST, and other kinds of estrogens just to make them grow fat faster. Yep. To make them produce more meat, more milk.
Some of the cows they eat, GMO corn, and the grass-fed. Actually, eating meat from grass-fed beef it really makes a big difference on the inflammation as well.
Absolutely, and inflammation is certainly a disruptor of ovulation and fertility. So, that's a huge source of chemicals that disrupt our endocrine hormonal production. So we have to be really careful about the parabens and the BPA. We talk about there's BPA in the lining of canned foods. There's BPA in the sales receipts in that ink. So no, you don't need your receipt. No, you don't want to eat out of canned foods. Yep. You don't want to microwave in plastic. There are so many things like that, and we obviously can't avoid exposure at every turn, but we can take steps to clean our house with non-toxic cleaning products. True. Put non-toxic Strive Marketplace is a great place to look for non-toxic cosmetics, etc. Because all of these things in the end, exposure to chemicals, over extreme exercise, extreme dieting, extremes of anything that, just burning the candle at both ends, being on the computer late at night so that you're disrupting your melatonin production. That has a huge hit on cortisol and adrenal function because the adrenals regulate the sleep-wake cycle. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I see test results where people's cortisol levels are way high at night and they really should be low at night. When they're high at night, that affects appetite hormones, and then that disrupts our ability to eat, to keep a control on our appetites. The appetite hormone ghrelin, the hunger hormone, can increase wildly when we don't sleep at night. So now we're hungry all the time, and we have sugar energy. Cravings.
We need quick energy. That's why. You're exhausted.
Body's trying to fuel you. So these are all things to be aware of when you're trying to get balanced and in a place where you're ready, steady, go for pregnancy.
Yeah, totally. And so if people want to find you, and then I'll also be putting the Wholesome Fertility 100, which is the code they can use to apply it for a consultation for hormonal testing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. And also they can find you. Go online to yourhormonebalance.com. We have a great symptom quiz there. Mm-hmm. And that's the first place to start to, and it gives you you go through a lot of the different symptoms and then mark them out, and it gives you a good sort of idea, as to where you are. Are you likely to have a hormone balance? Highly likely, unlikely? So that's, I'd say, the first place to start. And then you can read about the different hormone packages that we make available to you. And I hope your listeners will take advantage of that, because it really is, it's a game changer. And I can say that I'm not a fertility expert, but just by helping people get their hormones rebalanced, there have been so many women I've talked to that first step have gotten their period back. Many women on birth control have quite a journey ahead of them once they get off. If they've been on birth control for over 5 or 10 years, it can be, it's a great book to read, by the way, Jolene Brighton, Beyond the Pill. Mm-hmm. And Woman Code by Alyssa Vitti is another one. Chapter 7 on optimizing fertility is hugely important. You've probably interviewed either one of them, but those things are are extremely, they're part of your armory. There's so much that we have in our tool basket to get to the place we want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, lucky enough, we have the technology, and we have, might as well use it because it can really give us a lot of insight. And it's not like we're shooting in the dark.
No, exactly. We don't want to be shooting in the dark. We want to be shedding light.
Right.
We want to be illuminating the path forward. And it's so doable. So I'm really happy that you've brought this subject up for your listeners, because there's, don't sink into a hopeless place. There's so much that you can do naturally. There's chasteberry Vitex, there's natural progesterone if you're low in it. There are many ways to go to get yourself back into the place where you're in an optimal space.
Absolutely. And so besides the website, how can people find you? You have Instagram as well, right?
We have a great Instagram site. My daughters and the three of us, we're a little family business, really, and we provide a lot of content. And every day, we're posting every day at Your Hormone Balance. So please go there. We have a newsletter, just chock full of information, and that's what we're about. We're about educating. We're not so much about treatment as we are about, let's try to identify the root cause of your issues. Let's try to help you get your period back. Let's try to get you into a state where your hormones are balanced so that you can ovulate properly, so that if you're ready, you can conceive and then take that pregnancy to a healthy term. And this is all, as I said, there are many women that I've talked to who have achieved that. And even been surprised that they could, because they had to, it's reframing your mindset too, and saying, hey, this doesn't need to be the story of my life. I can change this narrative. And believe me, you can.
Oh, you can. And not every professional will tell you that because of the way they're trained. And so I find it so empowering. And you could, turn it around even just with diet alone. But of course, herbs help and supplements help as well. So thank you so much, Candace, for coming on. This was such an important topic, so I'm really happy. And also thank you for your wonderful, generous gift to the listeners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, happy to do it. If it helps one woman get her period back and get pregnant and take that baby to term, we're ready for you. We're here for you. So
awesome.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. All right. Take care.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.